Okay, here's the branding process. And again, these are EFI tools. So on some systems, you'll need to enter EFI boot mode or change the boot information so it'll access those EFI tools. And then once you boot to those tools, again, hit F9 to access the tools. You want to select boot from EFI file. On the newer systems, this is just referred to as boot from file. Select the drive itself. Depending on the year of the system, you'll need to select the brand directory correctly. So on this system, I've selected brand 11, but depending on what year it is, again, select the correct year. Now it goes all the way up to 15. There's a brand 15 introduced in 2.8. And then once you're entered the branding tool, the tool itself is always named the same for every model year. It's always called Boot 64X EFI. So once you've entered the brand year for your system, select the Boot X64 EFI tool to run. Do note that this tool is non-destructive as well. You can run the wrong version of the tool. All it will do is tell you to run a different version. Sometimes it'll indicate the version or the year you should run. Other times it'll just produce an error. But either which way, it won't work on the wrong year system. Since this is an EFI tool as well, it also starts with a startup NSH file. Do not skip that or abort it in any way. Once the branding tool starts, there's a number of batch files to brand the actual system depending on its year. So if it's brand 12 and earlier, you use 1 to enable the features and 3 to disable. If it's brand 13 and later, you'll use 2 to enable the features and 4 to disable them. So again, there's a series of batch files here that when you type in one of these numbers, it'll run a number of different applications to actually enable or disable AMT. Again, this is just the AMT feature we're branding here. The other 2 features, TPM and Intel AT, are branded from within the DMI FIT application. Often you'll need to run this tool a second time to get the pass this machine is configured. This is the message that indicates that the process has been successful. If you don't see this the first time in rebooting, simply run the tool a second time, follow the exact same process again, and reboot. Generally, you'll see the pass this machine is configured. Okay, so if branding has happened on the system, you've done the branding process, make sure you reboot to make sure there's no errors during rebooting. And then you'll restart DMI FIT and now click commit and lock. Verify the information in DMI FIT itself, verify that the UUID has been correctly formed, and then you're ready to reboot the system and restore customer defaults if everything's worked correctly. You can verify that the Intel features have been correctly loaded into the system by checking in BIOS. AMT is listed in the BIOS as well as AT. The TPM's in the BIOS as well. Some of these features to see, though, you'll have to set a BIOS password. So for the TPM in particular, it's maybe not the easiest way to see that it exists, but anyway, it's listed in the BIOS, and it's something you can confirm that's enabled correctly by checking the BIOS. All the systems you'll need to restore back to customer defaults. I think I've said this a number of times already. I'll say it again. Please restore any of the BIOS settings back to the defaults. So again, the boot settings are not restored by setting defaults. So you'll have to go in and remember how they were set or make a note and restore those back to the way they were originally. Okay, let's take a look at the demonstration of using DMI FIT and the branding tools. Okay, so on this system, I'm going to enter my WinPE drive into the front left USB stick again, and then restart the system. Here I'm going to enter the BIOS to make sure that I'm in legacy mode first. The Windows PE environment needs to boot from legacy mode rather than EFI mode. So I'm not sure how this system's set. So instead, what I'll do when I first boot is I'll get into BIOS. Okay, as BIOS loaded, I don't know if you saw at the top there was a message that said that the machine was in NPM mode, and it actually shows you the number of reboots you have. So it showed me 2 of 10 that have already been rebooting a couple times. So here to ensure that it'll boot to the Windows PE image, I'll enter the advanced menu, go into boot options. Scroll down. Okay, so here, here it is set to legacy, so it'll work correctly. I wasn't sure how the system was originally set up, so here it's set to legacy. It'll boot fine to the Windows PE environment. I'll go ahead and exit, save my changes. Now when rebooting, I'll press F9 to access the boot order or the boot manager. Here's the manufacturing image shown at top. Oops, I missed it again. Here I'll select the USB hard drive. Windows PE takes a minute to boot or so. It's a miniature Windows environment, so it has a number of drivers and other services that require a second to get loaded. But if you see this logo, you're in good shape because that's the Windows PE Start logo. Okay, it's just about ready now. And Windows PE starts a little bit different than in DOS. Windows PE makes a number of virtual drives and then puts you in that virtual drive. So see, it's made X and left me in the X drive. The trouble is my tools are not on the X drive, so I have to find out which drive my tools are on. I can simply fish around and try to find them by, F colon, G colon, H colon, looking at them one at a time, but I use the disk part tool to find where the drive has been mounted. So I used disk part again. A disk partition tool loads, and here I can use the list volume command, and it'll show all the mounted drives and how they're listed as letters. So here, all the attached drives to the system are listed. My drive here is shown as the removable drive, and it's D. So my drive is D. I probably wouldn't have guessed D, so it's good that I ran this program to figure out that I need to go to the D drive. So I'll use D colon to navigate over to the D drive. Oh, I'll need to leave disk part first. So type in exit to leave the disk partition tool. And once you're back at the command prompt, you can then go to the drive that's attached. I'm at the D drive. I'll change into the WN DMI FIT directory and then run the WN DMI FIT tool. Okay, here's the tool running in the Windows PE environment. It looks a little bit different than how it looks when it's in Windows itself, but again, it has all the same features. This system has already been programmed, so again, make sure you always select from the list, program all the various pieces of information. Once you get all the information programmed in correctly, then it's time to click the commit only button first. So I verified all the information looks good here. I'll go ahead and click commit only. It gives me a message saying, ready to commit, would I like to continue? Throughout this process, a number of command screens will open and close. The system might also reboot repeatedly. Do not close any of the screens that open and close, nor power on and off the system during the reboot process. Sometimes it looks like it's doing things and you may not follow what's actually happening, but again, it's running a whole series of files and loading a bunch of different images. So you need to wait until that process is finished before you alter the system or change it in any way. Okay, so now the commit has been successful. The information has been programmed to the system board correctly. I'll go ahead and click OK. It leaves me back at the command prompt. I can type in exit to reboot the system. And now what I want to do is re-enter the BIOS, because now I need to switch it to EFI mode. So once I've re-entered the BIOS, and as you can see, I've been rebooting the system, so I'm sort of running out of reboots one after another. This process takes 3 to 4 reboots to complete, so make sure you start with your full set. We'll take a look in the troubleshooting section how to alter that number to either get more or less boots, depending on whether you want to lock the system or be allowed a couple more times to cycle it. Okay, so now I'll go into the BIOS here and change the setting for EFI mode. The EFI tools need to have this setting set to run. Go ahead and accept that some of the systems might might change, but now I need to remember that the system originally for the customer was set to legacy. So when I'm done, I'll have to go back in and disable that and switch it back to legacy. Restoring BIOS defaults will not change the setting. So make sure you remember this and manually change it back. Sometimes the system won't boot correctly if this is left set wrong. So go ahead and save your changes. I'm sorry, I can exit and save my changes all in one fell swoop. So go ahead and exit and save your changes. And now again, when it reboots, hit F9 to get to the boot manager. Here we'll need to select our EFI file, so boot from EFI file. Select the disk at the top here is my disk. The other one is the tools drive on the system for running the diagnostic tool. So I want to select my USB stick. Here's the EFI images on my USB stick. As you can see, there's quite a few. Earlier, it indicated that I needed to run brand 14, so that's the tool I'm going to use. I open up the brand 14 directory. Again, there's a number of EFI images in that directory, but I'll want to run boot x64 EFI. That's my tool for programming AMT. Wait for the startup program to run. And here it's already run a batch file and put me in the correct directory. So here I am in the FS1 directory in the brand 14 folder, and it shows me the information and gives me a couple messages about how to restore the system at the end. I'm going to show you, unfortunately, the system is descriptor locked already, so I can't do the branding process here, but I'll show you the batch file. So I've done a directory listing, and you can see the various batch files that do the programming. So if I type 2 or 4, I can program the system. But unfortunately, on this system, yeah, it's already been committed, so you can't commit again. So what we'll do instead is show you the end of the process as if it's been branded correctly. So here, I'll remove the USB drive, and I'll reboot again. And I'm going to try to ensure, here I'm going to show you the tool in Windows itself. So I'm going to let it boot to Windows because this system does have Windows on it. If it didn't have Windows, I would reboot to the WinPE environment and run DMI FIT from that environment again. But since the system has Windows, I'll show you the second time running it from the Windows environment. It runs about the same. It just looks very slightly different. The fonts are a little bit different. Okay, so we didn't see any error messages during boot, so the commit must have been successful. Let the system completely boot up. Insert the DMI FIT drive on the system. And here, enter the DMI FIT directory, and here I could just double click on DMI FIT. Here is it running in Windows. All the information's been committed successfully. It's all still there. No all Fs for the UUID. The UUID looks correctly formed. Everything looks fine. So I'm ready to commit and lock the NPM. So here I'll click the second button. It'll warn me that I'm going to lock the system. Go ahead and click OK. And here again, I'll want to reboot the system. Pull out my USB key. Make sure it doesn't boot to that again. Okay, you can see here the messages disappeared, so the system is no longer in manufacturing mode, indicating that it's been locked. But I'll show you what that looks in DMI FIT as well, just so you know. Again, during the lock process, you can see the system's just rebooted twice, doing its process. So again, do not change that in any way. Don't power the system on and off. Don't try to alter its boot process. Let it do its, follow through its batch file completely. Okay, now that we've re-entered Windows, we can rerun DMI FIT. Again, I could have run this from the WinPE environment, but I'm going to show it to you from Windows. Just the tool's still getting loaded here. This way. Okay, so now I'll go in and run DMI FIT for a second time. Okay, and here you'll see this message. The NPM is not unlocked. What this indicates is that the NPM on this system, the system is no longer in NPM mode. So it can no longer be programmed because it's been locked. So when I click OK, you'll notice here both of the buttons are now grayed out. So if you start with this process, you'll have to do a little bit of troubleshooting to unlock the system to allow it to be programmed. But at the end of this process, this is exactly what you want to see. You want to see that both of the buttons are now disabled because the system is locked. The information is all correct across the system. The UUID is correctly formed, and the system is locked at the end. So this is exactly how we want the system to end up. The last thing I'm going to do is shut down, and later I'll be showing you how to unlock the system using the SMC bin file on this particular system.